Hello, everyone. Welcome to Caspian Policy Center's next webinar. We will be discussing today energy issues in the Caspian region and also its impact for the energy security in Europe and other important developments for the energy sector. My name is Afghan Nifty. I'm the Executive Director of the Caspian Policy Center. I'd like to welcome all our participants who are joining us from US and also from the region. This is a very important event at this point because we've been organizing regional webinars up to this point on different issues, health policy, economic issues, and now the next one is on the energy. Price shocks, supply overhangs, complex international dealings among governments of oil-producing countries, cutbacks in plant investments in oil and gas production and exploration, a rise in competitive renewable energy production technologies, and corporate restructurings. The international oil and gas sector has faced a variety of challenges over the past 6 months of 2020. The continuing global COVID-19 pandemic is another factor affecting the sector directly as well as through its impacts on the global economy. Yet energy security has been and remains a critical factor in countries' national security calculations and overall international relations agenda, with the Caspian region playing an important role as a supplier and transportation route for oil and natural gas. The Caspian Policy Center is hosting this important virtual panel to discuss among senior government and corporate figures to look at current and expected changes and their potential implications. Particular topics will include the region's continued role in the global energy security picture, the US, Caspian, and inter-regional cooperation amid pandemic crisis, the current energy transition, and further utilization of renewable sources of energy. Once again, I thank you for all the speakers that are joining us today. I also thank to the Embassy of Azerbaijan, Embassy of Uzbekistan, Embassy of Georgia for helping us put this event together. Here I'd like to stop and give the floor to our dear moderator, Babsi Kuda. Please.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Good evening, afternoon, depending on your time zone. We're very pleased to have a chance to talk today because, as Efkan noted, this is a very interesting time in the energy patch. I know the headlines are so focused on COVID and the effects of COVID, but there's a lot that's just been going on, and particularly just within the past few weeks. For example, Secretary Pompeo was talking yesterday about sanctions regarding, Nord Stream 2 and Turkish Stream in the CAFTA context. Southern Gas Corridor is coming to completion, a major $40+ billion project that has been years in the works, that has been involved intense intergovernmental as well as in, corporate activity. But also just within the oil and gas markets, we've been seeing, we saw the price collapse in April. We've seen the questions about OPEC supply. We have representatives here of one of the OPEC Plus members. How is all of that moving forward? And then also the effects this having in the United States in terms of our own oil and gas production and the rise of LNG and now the changes in LNG, the competition between LNG and pipeline gas. Also, I think one of the things that I'm pleased to sort of broadening the scope of our discussion today is the domestic developments within the region. This is an area that is growing, has been growing economically. It is now being slammed too by the pandemic, but where there's rising needs for energy. Questions in terms of the environment, but also there are questions in terms of utilizing the tremendous renewable capacity here, solar, wind, hydro, in the countries of the Caspian Basin. But at the same time, there's also the question of integration of things like power grids and so forth. And so I think this is actually a great opportunity, here to sort of see some of the interaction among governments and companies, which is essential really for the development of energy in the region and this region's important role in terms of the global energy picture, in terms of global energy security, in terms of global supplies. So with that, I'd like to turn the floor over to Deputy Assistant Secretary Kurt Donnelly. He's Deputy Assistant Secretary in the Bureau of Energy Affairs at the State Department in Washington, D.C. He's been in the job since August last year. His previous assignments include being DCM in Belgrade, and he's worked as well as our mission to NATO in the U.S. National Security Council. He's been director for the State Department's Office for International Religious Freedom, as well as a director for Central Asian Affairs. So Kurt, if I could just turn the floor over to you to get us started.
Great. Thanks so much, Bob. Thanks, Mr. Nifty, for the Caspian Policy Center hosting this discussion. Timely discussion, important issues. So let me jump in. I'll try and be aware of my 5 minutes before I get flagged down with the death hand that I'm out of time. First off, let me just say a couple words about COVID-19 and what's happening in the world. According to the IEA, total energy investment this year is declining by 20% globally. That's an enormous number. In the gas sector, they estimate that the decline in investment will be 30%. So those are huge amounts of money being pulled out of investments. But it's not just the money, it's the attention, it's the activity, it's the inventiveness, the creativity of our companies who, when they invest this money, bring their talents, bring their skills, bring their manpower to play. So right there, there's a huge change globally happening, and we're really not going to understand the effects of that for some time. Even before COVID, Bob, you touched on some of this, there were big changes going on in the world. The US over the past few years has emerged as a leader in, a global leader in oil and gas production. Now that's undergoing a change now because of COVID and the recession. But that's a sea change. As someone who grew up during the 70s, this is an enormous change, not only in our psychology, in our economy, but in our foreign policy views. Another important change: the EU has firmly committed itself to a carbon-free economy by 2050. The implications of this are not known to us. They're not known to the EU, but they are on this path, and the implications are enormous for not just for the EU, but for the global energy markets and the global economy. Bob, you pointed out international oil companies, even prior to COVID, were undergoing, I think, a number of them were undergoing a fundamental reassessment of where they were making their big investments, especially in international exploration, production, those kinds of things. That hit up against COVID, and so it just, in some ways, accelerated some of those decisions, and we're all aware of some of those that have happened. And then just as COVID was beginning to hit all of us, Saudi Arabia decided to blow up the oil market by dumping huge amounts of supply in the oil market. That has been sort of constrained again with the OPEC Plus agreement, and we'll see how that plays out. But all these things were huge shocks, short-term and long-term, to the environment that we're all operating in. And what it points out is what is always needed in any times, but certainly in the time we're facing now, is vision. Vision from governments, visions from companies, visions from actors, thinkers, inventors, creative people. It's this kind of vision that gave us the Southern Gas Corridor. When you talk to people 2 decades ago, when these ideas were being floated, there were lots of people saying this is crazy, it doesn't make any sense, you're going to waste money, and look where we are. So first off, a big congratulations on the imminent completion of the Southern Gas Corridor. Vision has led to some other things. The cooperation in the Eastern Med, troubled because primarily because of Turkey's attitude, but still tremendous progress in the cooperation among countries in the Eastern Med to exploit those resources that have become available. And we'll see what that leads to in the future, but we see tremendous possibilities there, and it's an important priority for the US government. Vision has led to a real sea change in Europe's energy security. This is something that the United States has really led on, but we have real partners in Europe who also recognize the danger that they have been facing for the past couple decades of Russia's coercive use of its energy dominance in Europe. And I won't go through the list of things, but there is a long list of significant changes in European energy policies at the EU level, at the country level, at the regional level, that have really changed the whole dynamic. And Russia is in a very different position vis-a-vis Europe than they were 10 or 15 years ago. If they pull the plug on their gas supplies to Europe, it's a very different scenario than it was 10 or 15 years ago. Nevertheless, the job's not done. Bob, you mentioned the Secretary's announcement yesterday of our reinterpreting CATSA to address the threats that we see from Nord Stream 2 and Turk Stream 2. So I think I'm under my 5 minutes. I'll leave it there. I'm looking forward to the discussion. Don't want to occupy a lot of time, but again, thanks for this opportunity. Looking forward to the discussion.
Thanks a lot, Kurt. That was really great and appreciate it. If I could turn the floor over now to Deputy USAID Deputy Assistant Administrator Javier Piedra. He is overseeing and managing the South and Central Asia and technical services portfolios at USAID. He brings 35 plus years of private and public sector experience to USAID. He has spent several years in Asia working on investment banking, USAID's funded credit initiatives, and was a senior advisor on the World Bank Central Asia Trans-Biodiversity Project. So I'd be interested to sort of hear what USAID is doing and getting a little more, I think, actually I will be sort of spoiler alert here, they've been doing a lot that I don't think necessarily has been noted by the public. So, Deputy Administrator Piedra.
Thank you, Ambassador. And I would just add that I spent 16 years in Central Asia full time, not traveling there on occasion, and I've driven all throughout Georgia and Azerbaijan also on the road. So from Tbilisi to Batumi and all over. So I know it very well. So first of all, good morning to everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you. I'd like to thank the Caspian Policy Center for organizing today's discussion. Thanks for having me. And what I'll do is very briefly, as the ambassador mentioned, I'll go over some of the activities that we currently have in Central Asia, and we've been there for 25 years. And this is an important milestone, I think, this conference here. And I have a few points that I'd like to make at the end. USAID has partnered with Central Asia for the last 25 years to accelerate the country's development, promote stability, and foster regional connectivity and cooperation among the 5 states, including with Afghanistan. Increasingly, the connectivity with Afghanistan is important, and going west as well. Our partnerships with private industry are at the heart of our strategy. At USAID, we know that private enterprise is the single most powerful force for improving livelihoods, strengthening communities, and accelerating self-reliance, or a day when foreign assistance will not be necessary. So we're on 2 fronts. We do humanitarian, which is what most people understand USAID, and then we have all the development work, and very heavily focused on energy security, energy independence. And in Central Asia specifically, I'll just go over 2 or 3 examples of what we've been doing, but we've been mainly focused on renewables and on systems and the market architecture in terms of pricing and these type of issues. So we've recently partnered with Kazakhstan to launch the first in the region renewable energy auctions. These auctions have helped to bring in foreign investment and have lowered electricity costs. Over the past 2 years, 28 auctions have resulted in new renewable energy projects that could generate electricity for up to 1 million homes. They have also lowered electricity prices by up to 40%. Additionally, we are supporting the Secretariat of the Central Asia, South Asia Power Project, or the CASA 1000, which is a multi-billion-dollar project, as you all know, that will facilitate the export of surplus hydro from Tajikistan and the Kyrgyz Republic South. We're also focused on regional cooperation around shared energy resources, including better water management, which feeds into the whole agricultural sector as well as into the hydro sector. And in this sense, we've are working on the Central Asia Regional Electricity Market. CARAM, we have 4 MOUs with the countries, except for Turkmenistan, but we are cooperating with Turkmenistan. And CARAM, the Central Asia Regional Electricity Market, will promote energy independence for the region by establishing a transparent, integrated, market-based power trade network. This will lead to improved energy reliability and lower electricity costs, while also creating an enabling environment for the private sector to thrive. Let me underscore that applying a market-based approach that drives the costs of grid-connected renewable energy, that's what we're focused on. We can increase the deployment integration of regional wind power and solar energy. The use of these 2 types of renewable energies has grown significantly since 2010, and we will continue to operate in these sectors in cooperation with the governments. And then before closing here, in addition to our work in Central Asia, USAID also implements energy projects in the broader Caspian region, including in Georgia and Armenia, where we are improving natural gas and electricity transmission infrastructure and promoting energy market liberalization. And let me end by saying that the region is important in itself. We're opening, which is rare, 2 new missions in Central Asia, which is news, both in Uzbekistan and Tajikistan. These are important moves that confirm the importance of the region. And I'd like to also just reinforce one last thing here. Anyone who's been reading the policy experts and analysts will know that it seems to be the time to move oil and gas west across the Caspian. The consensus seems to be that the Trans-Caspian interconnector makes sense. And I'm not going to go into the technical stuff because you all know it much better. And this will help increase the region's energy security, help bolster independence and sovereignty, help to have a more equal footing in the energy markets, help the Caucasus and Central Asia become a true crossroads and interregional cooperation, which is the subject matter of this discussion as well, and help provide Europe with more stable energy. And finally, I just want to reference the Blue Dot Network. Countries are signing up to the Blue Dot Network, and it is designed to promote quality infrastructure investment that is open and inclusive, transparent, economically viable, financially and environmentally and socially sustainable, and comply with certain standards. So we are here to assist in any way. We work very closely with the state and our colleagues, and I'm very thankful that Kurt is here. And I want to thank everyone and for their time and for the organizers, and thanks so much. And we're here to help, and we will stay in the region as honest brokers also. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There was a lot in that, and really appreciate it. I think, one of the things which we should have mentioned earlier on is we will be doing Q's and A's, and I think if I've got this right, Akbodo will correct me, we should be those who have questions should be using the Q&A function here on the Zoom conversation. But I think there was a lot that's been crammed into both of these remarks that we can explore later on. Deputy Minister Sultanov, it's good to see you again. We've chatted a number of times in Baku. The Deputy Minister took this position in 2019 and has been a professor at ADA University and has also taught political science at Truman State University, Texas Tech, and Slippery Rock. He has been engaged in work on energy politics and methodology, political economy, as well as international security. And so if I can turn to you, Mr. Deputy Minister, to sort of bring a regional perspective here, as someone who's got to worry about how the country fits in with the rest of the world, but also has some very definite needs at home.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Dear friends, those are very big questions, of course, and I'll try to start definitely, and then maybe we can go into some details as we discuss these issues. As you know, when the collapse in oil prices, of course, has affected the Azerbaijani economy because the budget currently for the current year is planned on the assumption of the oil price being $55 per barrel, and now it's a little bit more than $40. And also the volume of production, as Azerbaijan is part of this oil-producing countries group, the volume of production is going down, so both price is down and both price and the volume are down, and that, of course, has been influencing the situation in the country. What helps is that in the first quarter of the year, the oil prices were higher than the planned price in the budget, so it somehow compensates for the current problem. But especially during the first months of the second quarter, of course, the problem was really very bad, and but the situation is overall in control, and I think the biggest help for Azerbaijan is this monetary cushion that we have been developing, which is close to $50 billion. So that thing that we accumulated during good days now is helping us a lot during the bad days. But again, right now, if the situation is continuing the way it is, we don't see much problem in terms of the macroeconomic stability in the country. As mentioned, Azerbaijan is part of the oil-producing countries deal, and we have been compliant, 98% compliant in May, and we have been 100% compliant in June, and the cooperation is continuing, as you know, beyond the current year. When you look at the amount of oil produced in the between January and June, it has been down by 1 million tons, which equates a little bit more than 7 million barrels due to the processes that I have mentioned. And of course, this is also influencing the amount of oil Azerbaijan has been exporting. So the amount of exported oil together with the condensate has been down by 900,000 tons again, which is around a little bit less than between 6 and 7 million barrels. But at the same time, Azerbaijan has been producing more gas compared to the same period last year. So in the first 6 months of this year compared to the last year, our natural gas production went up by 11%. And this, of course, the countries we export our gas to is Georgia and Turkey. So far, we have exported about 1.3 billion cubic meters of gas to Georgia. So it's increasing. The amount is going up because of the beefed up production in Shah Deniz, in the Shah Deniz 2 stage of the Shah Deniz gas and condensate field. And the same is valid for Turkey. So we exported to Turkey this year, during the first half of this year, 24.5% more gas compared to the same period last year. Regarding the Southern Gas Corridor, Kurt mentioned about that everything is on track, and Azerbaijan is planning to, consortium definitely is planning to sell its gas already by December. And COVID has somehow, of course, is there, but so far, thank God, it has not influenced any process in terms of pipeline project in any way that would delay the entire process. So everything is on track regarding Southern Gas Corridor and TAP pipeline. Trans-Caspian natural gas pipeline, we always said that, and Mr. President also mentioned, so there's a country of origin, Turkmenistan, and there's a potential buyer, perhaps European countries. Azerbaijan is in between. And if there's an initiative, we are always ready to look into the issue and be part of this team and cooperate along those lines. What has been happening in the renewable energy sector in Azerbaijan is also, I think, very important. And I would tell you that the Ministry of Energy spends, I think it's, I would speculate, maybe 1/4 of its energy on bureaucratic energy, on renewable energy issues. Right now, the amount that we have, of course, we have mainly wind and solar in Azerbaijan. The potential is very big. Combined, we have a potential for 27 megawatt, 26,000 megawatt, 3,000 of it being 3,000 megawatt being wind power and 23,000 megawatt being solar. So far, we haven't realized much. So in terms of wind power, we have about 63 megawatt. In terms of solar power, we have about 34 megawatt. And in terms of waste energy, we have 37 megawatt strong power generation going on. Numbers are small compared to the potential we have, but still, I think I should tell you that we are still the best in the Caucasus. Of course, we would like to compare ourselves to countries that are have moved far forward, but still in the Caucasus, we are doing very well. So far, not very well, but we are doing better definitely than others. And Azerbaijan, the president already declared that the plan is to bring up the percentage of renewable energy in the overall installed capacity in Azerbaijan to 30%. Currently, it's 70%. Most of it is, of course, is hydro. More than 1,000 megawatt of energy is coming from hydro. But as you know, right now, we are going through this water shortage period. It is very, really unprecedented almost. It creates its own problems because we are a downstream country and other countries up there, including Armenia and Georgia and Turkey. So it kind of pushes us towards more and more cooperation, especially with regard to Armenia. It creates its own problems, but still, given water scarcity, there's more need to push forward regarding wind energy and solar energy. What we have done so far is that we already signed implementation agreement with Aqua Power of Saudi Arabia for a solar power, for a wind power station with the power of the strength of 240 megawatts, and with Masdar, which is United Arab Emirates country, for 200 megawatts solar power. And things are going, fingers crossed, very well, and we expect the foundations to be laid already in a couple of months, and that will really make Azerbaijan, if everything goes well, and it has been going so far, thank God, if everything goes well, we will be really standing out among the wider neighborhood in terms of the amount of both solar and wind per se, and as part of the overall installed capacity. But of course, next step, we have done these first projects as pilot project. We did not have auction, but really de facto it was an auction. We invited a lot of corporations, about 11 corporations were invited. And the biggest, of course, hurdle is that in Azerbaijan, being a welfare state, the price of electricity is very, very low. At the retail level, we are talking about 4 to 5 cents per kilowatt hour energy. And then the price, of course, is wind and solar are going down very fast, but still it's really difficult to compete with the generosity of Azerbaijani government. And that's a problem. Then you somehow have to subsidize, because we are asking these corporations, we ask them to come up with a price, and retail price in Azerbaijan for electricity is 3.4 cents. And we ask those corporations to match and to be below the retail price, subsidized retail price in Azerbaijan. That's why out of 11 corporations, only 2 remained at the end of the day. But the next step, we already prepared the legislation, the law on the renewable energy, and we submitted it to the government. The expectation is that it will be signed into law by the end of this year. And after that, that law also envisages the auctions as the next way to go, and this is the plan. So our next step is to have auctions and start that process, because that law, passage of that law also involves the passage of certain bylaws which are about auctions. This is very important point because, as you know, renewable energy means that Azerbaijan can free up natural gas to be consumed domestically or to be exported, because this 440 megawatt combined power generation that we are planning to have will result in the saving of about 300 to 350 million cubic meters of natural gas per year. So 1 megawatt of installed capacity is about is giving us about 0.7 million cubic meters of gas per year. And again, that will be
That's significant.
Quite significant number, and that's also something that really excites us. And the last point I would like to make.
I'm going to have to be nasty here and stop you for a second. And want to come back to this because you're giving us a great deal of information that I'd like to also sort of go into more detail. But I know the clock gods work against us in these programs, so I've got to have to, if I may ask you just to sort of stop there, and let us move forward. I'm very sorry to have to do that.
Sure.
If I could turn it over briefly now, though, to someone who I think you also know pretty well, Mr. Elshad Nasirov, who is the Vice President for Investments and Marketing at SOCAR, the state oil company for Azerbaijan. And I think this is a chance to kind of build on what the Deputy Minister was saying, but also coming at this from the state oil company perspective, something a little more in the commercial side. Mr. Nasirov has an extremely illustrious career in the sector. We've talked about in the past, someone I enjoyed working with when I was in Azerbaijan. He's been previously chief of marketing operations. He's also a former diplomat. So if I could turn the floor over to Elshad.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Chikuta. It's very good to have this opportunity to share the morning in Washington in Maine with you, with the professionals that know everything about the Southern Gas Corridor. Mr. Donnelly, I hope that I'm pronouncing your last name correctly, because you corrected me in Baku. You said that you are Irish, not Italian.
Yes,
So I hope you pronounce
right.
your name good. And especially Ambassador Chikuta, a professional in everything related to the region of the Southern Caucasus and the energy issues and the energy security of Europe. So with your permission, I will not stop or dwell upon the Southern Gas Corridor achievements. Everybody knows about this, so I will not be able to provide you with anything new. But of course, I would like to share with you our appreciation of the fact that despite of the COVID pandemic and doubts of some that the companies in the south of Italy will not be able to construct the pipeline in the Italian coast and to connect Albania and Italy in time, we're happy that, knock on wood, the pipeline will be ready and operational in time in October, November this year. But the subject of our discussion today is Trans-Caspian as a global hub for energy, security and sustainability. And I would like to inform you what we in SOCAR are doing to enable our enhanced cooperation with the countries to the east of the Caspian. So right now we are just recently the three presidents of three countries, Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, had a webinar to discuss the possibilities of the contribution of the three countries to provide the Lapis Lazuli corridor from Afghanistan to Azerbaijan, Turkey, and Europe, and back to Afghanistan. So we in SOCAR are also contributing to that. We are supplying jet fuel, gasoline, and gas oil to Afghanistan, including the allied forces there. We are currently, together with BP, and Bob knows that, we are engaged in the cooperation and the negotiations with the Uzbek Neftegas, the oil and gas company of Uzbekistan, with the subject of exploration and possible production jointly with our Uzbek colleagues and BP in Uzbekistan, making the contribution to the Trans-Caspian transportation. Recently, we have been employed also in the discussion of the possible use of Tajikistan transportation routes. As far as Turkmenistan is concerned, which is the most interesting part of the Trans-Caspian interconnection, we have discussed and agreed and sent a special letter to the government of Turkmenistan with the proposal of SOCAR to finance an air freight airline directly from Geneva through Baku to Ashgabat and back, but the pandemic situation prevented us from doing that immediately. At the same time, we provided the Turkmenistan government with the proposal to open up an office of SOCAR in Ashgabat in order to enable our day-to-day cooperation with our Turkmenistani colleagues from the oil and gas industry. At the same time, we are importing oil products from Turkmenistan and raw material. We are refining those raw materials in our refinery in Baku and taking jet fuel produced from Turkmenistan raw material to Europe and Afghanistan again. And of course, one of the most important items is the transportation of hydrocarbons across the Caspian. For the last 2 years, we transported almost 5 million tons of liquid oil through Azerbaijan to the world markets. And that means that the Trans-Caspian energy corridor already exists. And you know that before the Iranian sanctions were triggered, we were engaged in the transportation of the Turkmenistani gas across Iran into Azerbaijan and Georgia. So therefore, even without the construction of the Trans-Caspian pipeline, transportation of gas across the Caspian is possible. So right now, when the Convention on the Status of the Caspian Sea has been signed, and Southern Gas Corridor is almost completely operational, there is nothing which can stop the transportation of the Caspian hydrocarbons to the European Union. But at the same time, I don't think, it's my personal view, I don't think that it's coincidental that in 3 months before the startup of the operation of transportation of Azerbaijani and Caspian gas to the European Union, the Republic of Armenia, as you know, started the military operation against Azerbaijan on Sunday, 12th of July. And today we have the 5th consecutive day of direct military confrontation between Armenian armed forces and our armed forces. But differently from all of those 30 years of confrontation, these military actions are now taking place not in Nagorno-Karabakh, in the territory of Azerbaijan, which is inevitably, recognized by everyone, all international organizations and every country, except for Armenia. Right now, the military operations are between Armenia and Azerbaijan at the border between our country and Armenia. And Ambassador Chikuta knows very well the map of the region, and I would invite you to, after our meeting, to open up the map of the region to find out that all infrastructure, everything that leads Azerbaijani and Caspian energy resources to the Western world, to the world markets, is located in that particular narrow corridor of 45 miles wide, which was named by Luke Coffey of the Heritage Fund as Ganja Corridor. Baku, Tbilisi, Ceyhan, Southern Gas Corridor, Baku-Tbilisi-Supsa Pipeline, Baku-Tbilisi-Kars Railway, Baku-Tbilisi Highway. Everything is located there in the direct vision and direct vicinity from the military operation started by the Armenian military. I would not impose any propaganda on you and try to explain who started, who retaliated. I don't think that it's necessary because you can find out and you know definitely. So I would use this opportunity to invite our colleagues in Washington and elsewhere to think about how fragile this Ganja corridor and this region is, and to think how to provide this security, the military and physical security, to the corridor which is providing energy security to Europe. Thank you very much. Agota, I'm sorry if I took another minute of your time.
No, thank you very much. And that's important. And one of the things, frankly, which I wanted to get into as well in the Q&A session, because I think the geopolitics remain very important. This is a part of the world that is critical. And I think one of the things which I think one of the reasons why we do this work at the Caspian Policy Center is to raise awareness of the role that it plays. In that connection, maybe switch now over to Georgia, a country which is equally critical. I always, but it's also a country which has its own geopolitical threats. I won't be diplomatic, that it has to try to deal with, and sort of bringing the energy out of the Caspian region. Both Azerbaijan and Georgia are critical to that path, as Elshad just noted. If I could just, Mr. Chikavani is CEO of the Georgia Energy Fund. His previous positions include Deputy Minister of Energy and Deputy Minister of Economy and Sustainable Development. He's also worked closely with USAID on the G4G project, water development component. As we just heard, water is another factor that's deeply involved in the energy security picture, and something which does not necessarily get a whole lot of attention and frankly needs it. He's also been director of the Georgia International Energy Corporation, where his job included resolving the conflicts between irrigation and hydroelectric energy projects. So if I could turn the floor over now to Mr. Chikavani for 5 minutes.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Caspian Policy Center, our dear colleagues, for organizing this very interesting call, and I think sharing our experiences during this COVID crisis is very important for all the members. First, I would like to comment on Mr. Nasirov's information, what he provided. We are very much aware of the situation, and we hope that this conflict will get resolved very, very soon, because this is critical not only for Azerbaijan, not only for West, but for Georgia as well. And we had a very similar situation in 2008 when our north neighbor occupied south of Asia, and part of Western route export pipeline was under this occupation. So we really hope that the situation will resolve quickly. COVID is something that I'm sure will get defeated, but peace between people, between our countries, it's more and more important. Concerning situation in energy sector, let me start quickly updating you on recent developments in Georgian energy sector. As you know, we become a full-fledged member of energy community in 2017. Last year was critical for Georgian energy sector because we adopted the main legislation, main laws, which is the law on electricity and gas, which regulates new markets in both sectors. We adopted the renewable energy law, energy efficiency law, with the relevant energy efficiency action plan and renewable energy action plan. We are currently building a new electricity market We are testing right now day-ahead market and the balancing market, which will be operational next year, and which will set very good foundation to even increase further cooperation between our neighboring countries, which will increase competitiveness in our region, trade, cross-border trade, and investments in the renewable energy sector. We are also paying big attention to critical infrastructure, and thanks to USAID, EU support, we are rehabilitating, updating the existing infrastructure. We developed 10-year network development plan for natural gas and power sector. We are strengthening our ties with our good neighbor Azerbaijan, which will enable us to trade even more electricity with Azerbaijan. In a couple of years, we will strengthen our interconnector with Turkey by adding third pole, and which will increase capacity to 1,050 megawatts potential trading capacity with Turkey. And of course, we are still depending on Russian electricity and Russian electricity system, and which will stay in coming years one of our main partners for electricity. Just very quickly to say that during COVID, we have not stopped working on the market development and legislation. In April, we adopted new market concept with unbundling requirements by third energy package. We had accepted this market model, and we are working to do the same with the natural gas. As I mentioned, regional cooperation is very important. We see Georgia is vulnerable for seasonality, and as you know, our electricity generation mainly is driven by hydro, but I'm happy to say, as a director, as CEO of the Energy Development Fund, that our focus has been switched more to development of solar and hydro power projects, solar and wind power projects. And currently there is around 330 megawatt wind project under development, around 100 megawatt solar, and we see this number increase tripled by 2030. So diversification of routes, diversification of energy sources, renewable sources has been Georgia's only way to protect its sovereignty, to strengthen our energy security. And of course, last but not least, we would like to say that completion phase of Shardenius 2 is very welcomed in Georgia. We see this as one of the main foundations of our energy security. We contribute to energy security of the West, but by this we are helping our energy security as well. Trans-Caspian project, we see that this is an opportunity, and we welcome development of this project as well. Just quickly to mention, the COVID, of course, has brought changes and impact on the economy, on energy. We see declines and postponement of investments in renewable energy. We see decline in prices, oil prices, and renewable energy development. If we have competitive market, regional competitive market, it's very hard when the oil prices also are dropping. So this has negative impact. We see small decline in oil transit, but the gas transit remains steady. So we hope that this situation will change next year, and all these projects which we have in pipeline, especially wind and the solar, will continue. One thing I would like to also add, that the hydrology has strongly changed, and now we see more and more flash waters. And this year, Georgia spilled a huge amount of electricity. We wasted the water. So we are really starting to think about storage technologies, especially hydrogen is very interesting for us. And fund is ready to start a pilot project for hydrogen, for battery storage. And I think when we develop more markets, integrate regional markets, Azerbaijan, Turkey, Russia. We think that storage will play even more role for reserve capacity, provider of reserve capacity. So basically this is it, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. And it's good for starting to switch to these sort of broader questions of energy here too. If I could turn the floor over now to another of my former colleagues, Bob Scher from BP. Bob is the head of the International Affairs Group at BP America. He has a long and distinguished career, both the private sector as well as in the government. From 2015 to 2017, he served as the first Assistant Secretary of Defense for the new Office for Strategy, Plans, and Capabilities. And he's also served prior to that as the DAS Deputy Assistant Secretary for Asia and Pacific Security Affairs. He's been an associate at Booz Allen Hamilton, where he worked also on Asian countries and their strategic decision-making processes. But he is someone which we've worked with very closely on things having to do with the Southern Gas Corridor, with the developments in this region. It's an area that I know BP has a very strong interest in and long experience in. So if I could turn the floor over now to Bob.
Great. Thank you all. I had, I think, 20 minutes of remarks, but most of you have taken all of them, so maybe I'll be able to stick to my 5 minutes now. I want to, first of all, thanks to all the panelists and especially to the Caspian Policy Center for having this event and, frankly, ensuring that we all keep in touch on these important issues no matter what's going on. I know people throw around the terms like unprecedented a lot these days. Sadly, I'm going to do the same, but I actually think that in this case it fits. I mean, we can all see the crisis that was brought on by the pandemic. Frankly, one of the only few true black swan events that I can think of, even though that term is often used, in this one, we really couldn't imagine this. Although there are some smart people who managed to get a little bit of it right. The repercussions have clearly been felt everywhere, and obviously in the energy sector without a doubt as well. I think the way you get through these times is with a clear set of objectives, good planning, and friends and partners. Fortunately, we have all of these in BP and with our partners in the Caspian region. So it's one of the reasons we feel so good about where we are, even in these trying times, and why it's always a pleasure to be here. As you all, I'm sure know, but I feel compelled to say BP is committed to becoming a net zero company by 2050 or sooner. And I think what people often miss in that is that we're also committed to helping the world get to that same place as well. We know also, however, that the world currently needs oil and gas to be able to function, to help us to operate and to bring development to people all around the world. So we're going to continue to be an oil and gas company too, even as we work towards our ambition to become a net zero company. And to be clear, that ambition that was announced by our new CEO in February hasn't changed as a result of the pandemic. If anything, our commitment to becoming a net zero company has only increased. So given that, where do we find ourselves with our partners in the region? Where we find ourselves is still committed to working with our longstanding friends to figure out how to produce and transport the energy the world needs in a way that also appreciates and understands that we have to do so in a way that spends less of our overall carbon budget in the world. So fortunately, we have those friends here. All throughout the region, we've heard from many of them. And they share these commitments as well. And I think you can see these in the actions that all of us are taking. And I think it is noteworthy the amount of focus that Azerbaijan has put into pursuing their ambitious alternative energy program. To a large extent, you know, when things are at their roughest, you go to where you have your closest partners and where you know the environment best. And that has meant that BP has continued and has a clear commitment to the Caspian region writ large, and it works well, I think, for all of us. Look, first and foremost, as you look through this crisis, we're focused on people's health and well-being. Safety has always been a core principle for all of us, and that is no different now. But frankly, we need to make sure that we take care of our people. There are new challenges to safety all along. Sorry, I'm getting a message. Can you guys hear me? I apologize for. Sorry. Let me, I'll do what I can here. Apologies. I hope this doesn't cut too much into my minutes.
Don't worry about it. Just keep going.
Okay, let me see if I can, I'll pull it.
Maybe go off video.
Okay, I will take myself off video and then we will see how it goes. So, you know, we are taking care of our people and we're working with countries who also are very much taking care of their people. And that's been a great cooperation for all of us in the region. We also need to make sure that we live up to our commitments. We have the ability to, and we're going to, and frankly, we're still doing an awful lot in that area. We're continuing to operate. We continue to work towards new finds in the Caspian and in Azerbaijan. Continue construction of new platforms, although clearly it's been affected in terms of timing. The Southern Gas Corridor, we've already talked about, continue to build and finish. We transferred technical operatorship of the South Caucasus pipeline in March to SOCAR. And on the other hand, we've contributed to production cuts in Azerbaijan. Look, none of this is possible without the environment that we have in the region. It's that environment that allows us to be successful as a company and as successful as a partner. And it's really the whole region that we need, not just any one country, especially given the Caspian, where transportation is so critical to getting energy to where the markets are. So what do we need? What do we have? A region with stable governments and predictable regulations, a region that is at peace, and that's critical and not something we always have, and I think we've talked about that, a region that seeks to work together, and a region with good and reliable partners. Look, we in BP have been fortunate to be in this region for many decades. We understand it, and we have many friends here. That's why we continue to seek opportunities, not just maintain where we have, but seek new opportunities in the region, and some of those were mentioned as well. I think as long as the environment stays that way, it won't just be BP who sees opportunities here in the region, and all of us who are here in the region and committed to the region will benefit as everyone continues to prosper. Thank you. I'll stop it there and hopefully that made through.
At least it got through to Maine. That's about as remote as you could probably get anyway, so I think you're probably in good shape. Thanks, Bob, for that. And if I turn the floor over now to Amy Conroy. Amy is Director for International Governmental Affairs at with Chevron in Washington. She also brings tremendous experience in international energy matters. She's currently manager for Chevron's Europe, Eurasia, and Middle East portfolio, Chevron's corporate affairs team in DC. She is chair of the U.S. Kazakhstan Business Association and a member of the board of the U.S. Azerbaijan Chamber of Commerce. Before joining Chevron, she worked at the State Department's Energy Bureau. There's some other alums on the screen from that group. As well as also she was the energy officer at the U.S. Embassy in Budapest. She has worked at the International Energy Agency. She has been working with the UN and also with RTD. So Amy, if I could get you to talk a little bit, and as I sort of warned earlier, if you could talk a little bit about the other side of the Caspian, eastern side, and sort of build on some of the things that Elshad and Bob talked about in terms of that, but particularly in terms of Kazakhstan. So anyway, the floor is yours.
And it's great to see you and everyone here. As a budding extrovert, it's very hard to be stuck at home, and I'm really happy to just be around people and not my children, and to see everyone on the screen. So thanks so much, and it's really nice to see everyone. So something I took away from Bob's presentation is that, I mean, I could replace Kazakhstan and Chevron in many of the things that he said. We could just insert those words, because partnership is absolutely critical for Chevron and its long-term relationship with Kazakhstan. Just to kind of review Chevron's involvement in Kazakhstan really quickly, and I'm going to keep my remarks short and very happy to answer questions, because I know most of the people here are kind of focused on the other side of the Caspian. So we have had an incredible, I would say, symbiotic relationship with Kazakhstan since 1993, when we signed a 40-year contract. Chevron was really the first company to come in after the Soviet Union fell, and along with its partners created TCO, Tengiz Chevron. Since then, we have produced 3.1 billion barrels of oil equivalent and have invested tens and tens of billions of dollars of capital investment. We've invested 1.9 billion in Kazakhstani employees and social programs, as well as 3.3 billion in local goods and services. We are very, very dedicated to the local economy, to the people, to programs, to the environment. We also support and help Kazakhstani companies develop sustainable business models. And through this really difficult time, I have to emphasize again, like Bob was saying, we are deeply committed to the partnership. We've, through this difficult COVID times, Kazakhstan has been seeing a rise in rates of COVID, especially in the Ataral region, which is where TCO operates out of, unfortunately. And we've donated multiple millions of dollars in medical supplies, ventilators, hospital supplies, and we really feel very, very committed to the relationship even more now than ever. But during this time of difficult time in COVID, TCO, I just want to say TCO is operating normally, even though we've really drawn down our employees to only essential staff. And so we continue to operate normally. And also just wanted to note that we have one of the largest capital expansive projects going on in the world called the FGP WPMT. It's the Future Growth Project. And that's over 75% completed. We have about a little bit, almost 77% completed. So that's continuing to operate and continuing to expand. We've not made any changes in that. So everything's going along as planned on the expansion project. So again, you know, we've been drawing down any employees. We've been doing a lot of testing, following all the guidelines that we can to make it as safe and secure as possible of an operating environment. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and thanks so much for having me again.
Amy, thank you very, very much. And now let's move to the questions and answers section. So, and also I think this is a chance too for people who, you know, I had to sort of cut back on for time to sort of add some other points. But I think if I may, and I'm going to sort of address one of the more complicated factors here right now, which is the politics of the region. And probably Kurt, you're the first one I would probably turn to here, but also Elshad, Deputy Minister Sultanov, others probably also have opinions on this. As Elshad noted, there is essentially, I never like the term frozen conflict because when people die, it ain't frozen. And people are dying right now in the fight between Armenia and Azerbaijan. But there's also the question of Russian ambitions, Chinese interest in the energy from this region, what that does, in Iran, which is a country that, you know, we don't really talk about here, but is a factor. I think, you know, it's just as Elshad was noting, in some cases, you know, how Azerbaijan worked with Turkmenistan to try to figure out ways, and this enabled Turkmenistan to transport hydrocarbons west that don't need to go through Iran or through Russia. But in terms of the politics at the moment, are there things that that can be addressed in terms of the security, Kurt? But I think it's also, I think still we're seeing the flow of energy out of the region continuing unhindered. Is that a fair assessment?
Thanks, Bob. The Caucasus region and the politics, of course, are very complex, very difficult, and I don't want to stray into processes that are underway. But we all know that the conflict, the lack of cooperation in the Caucasus has been ongoing for way too long. I have to say it's remarkable that just looking at Azerbaijan, the progress they've made on their domestic economy, on building the pipelines to get the energy resources out. All of those things have been remarkable given the uncertainty in the region. It's unfortunate because we see things as energy and environmental issues and others of those. They're often seen as conflict inducing, but they really can be very important tools for building cooperation. Many years ago, I was stationed in Ankara and worked on environmental issues in the region. And I know that at the time, it was one of the few issues where where you could get ministers from the three Caucasian governments to actually sit down and talk about things, because these are absolutely fundamental issues. And we heard about the water shortage in Azerbaijan. Water is a scarce resource around the world, but especially in the Caucasus, and it's a shared water basin. And so that cooperation is fundamental to the well-being of all the people in the region. I don't have any master plans or solutions. I wish I did. If I did, I would have been remiss for not pushing them out many years ago. This is a horribly difficult situation, and one that does none of us any good. As far as Iran's relationship, Iran is going through very difficult times. They still have not made the decision that cooperation with the international community is what is going to be the best policy for their people. And as long as they don't do that, they're going to continue to face added difficulties. Certainly our sanctions policy vis-a-vis Iran is very well known. But this is a lot based on the concern of Iran being a bad actor in the region for a number of years. So this is not something new. This is just a more assertive policy on the part of this administration to really change that behavior. And we're hopeful that we will find a change in that behavior. But I don't know if I gave any sort of answer there, Bob, but I guess it's just, we continue to look for ways that we can build cooperation in the region. And we think that energy has been a really important source of cooperation and development. But it hasn't solved some of the real fundamental problems, and those are incredibly difficult.
Thanks, Kurt. Anyone else want to weigh in on that point? Okay, if I can maybe turn a little bit differently, and I think in some ways address this is a question that came in from one of the participants. Address this to Mr. Ciccovanni, but also I think also to Mr. Piedra. The question came in concerning a hydroelectric project close to the Turkish border. Chinese involvement in that, but if we could maybe talk a little bit more about Chinese involvement in projects in general in the region. And I think this also is something that Mr. Piedra, Deputy Assistant Administrator Piedra raised, and when he talked about the Blue Dot initiative. How, start with Giovanni, I mean, how do you sort of see Chinese involvement in hydroelectric projects, for example, or solar or wind? From where you're sitting in Georgia?
Thank you for the question. Actually, in past 2 years, we've seen increase in Chinese activities, their appetite in not only in energy, but as in all kind of infrastructure projects in Georgia. Actually, first foreign investor we had in hydropower in 2003 to a Chinese company, but since then we have not really seen as an investor Chinese companies, but more as a subcontractors for the infrastructure works. And our road big project is done by Chinese. There are some Chinese construction companies, but we have not had a big Chinese investor in its conventional sense. So interests are there. We've seen, I have calls every day almost from Chinese companies who want to invest in solar, in wind, in hydros, but so far they are not so flexible, I guess. They require more government guarantees, public power purchase agreements, state-backed up guarantees, and the other investors are more flexible. They can have better policies and investment policies, and they have less appetite. So far, that's the picture.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Mr.
I'll make one or two quick comments. I'll leave the politics to my very able state counterparts, but there's no doubt that Chinese activity is on the rise, particularly in the Central Asian side. I get oil and gas and mining in Central Asia and on the finance side. So clearly, it's on the rise. What I'd just like to reinforce is the collaboration and partnership, the necessity of all the countries talking. That's one of the things that we do. As you see in the Central Asia regional electricity market, where we have the MOUs with 4 of the 5 countries. We're keen and will continue to push renewables, as I said, water management. I'll just repeat the importance of that. That brings people together in Central Asia as much as in the Caucasus. And then, you know, we're into, and we think this is the way to go. We have a better business model than others in the region that we compete with. So, you know, the integrated market-based power, trade, generation, transmission networks, that's what we're focused on and assisting across the Caucasus and Central Asia. So yeah, those are my points on that.
Thank you. If I could just ask him, one of the questions that came in as well was sort of when this, you know, sort of the timelines on some of these regional electricity markets. Do you have any sense, Mr. Pedro, do you have any sense on that, or other participants, Deputy Minister Sultanov, on regional electricity markets and how these may actually become more operational?
Let me just say, I don't have a crystal ball. These things are complicated, even more so in a COVID environment. We've been working with the CASA 1000 transmission lines down into Pakistan for close to a decade, I think, which is real progress, I think. We are making progress in the Karam. We also are moving forward. I can't really, we have our own internal timelines that's in part subject to the cooperation between the countries and the budget situations. So we do best we can, working with state, of course, and all of our partners. Over.
Deputy Minister Sultanov, is there something you could maybe add a little bit to this question of the regional integration on electrical systems, or, you know, how, I think, you know, one of the points in this too is that the integration may also be a way to help cut the costs, and I think also to build on something Bob Scher said, cut the greenhouse gas footprints of some of these projects.
Yeah, I mean, the war between Azerbaijan and Armenia also important in this context as well, because Caucasus is a very small region. And when you are a small region, that means that your grids are not that secure. Things can get out of control, and you need to get connected to other countries so that they can keep you up in terms of frequency, in terms of some other problems. And right now, it's very interesting that Georgia and Azerbaijan, we are synchronized. We have synchronized system, and our system and Russian system are somehow synchronized. But Armenia has a synchronized system with Iran. And Russian and Iranian systems are very difficult to synchronize, very big two countries, and Russian electricity network in the southern parts of the country is not that strong. So that war, occupation of Azerbaijan territories now creates additional problem in terms of, because you have 3 countries interconnected, it's a better situation than 2 countries like Georgia and Azerbaijan getting connected to each other, right? And this is bad in terms of liberalization, because when you liberalize, you increase the chance of things going wrong and something happening to your electricity grid, and then these additional countries that you are connected to would come to your help. to keep you up in terms of blackouts. And also this is important in terms of renewable energy. In Europe, we see renewable energy taking off unprecedentedly because there are so many countries connected to each other, and this intermittency of renewable energy, when there are too many countries, I mean, a lot of countries interconnected to each other, that intermittency of renewable energy becomes less of a problem. And this will be always a hurdle in the Caucasus because we are, again, have this war situation, occupation of the territories of Azerbaijan. So to me, it's kind of back to geopolitics and how it hurts both liberalization of energy sector in all the countries involved, which causes the public coffers billions of dollars, and also how bad it is in terms of the moving up, increasing the share of renewable energy in our system.
Thank you. One of the questions that's come in from our colleagues at the Caspian Policy Center. I know it was mentioned a number of times regarding Turkmenistan and moving energy across the Caspian, moving it west. And I think it was Sisirov, talked about how, in some ways, de facto, there already is a floating pipeline in terms of oil and gas, oil products moving west from Turkmenistan. Turkmenistan is also flaring a lot of associated gas right now with production in the Caspian. There seems to be a lot of positives on building a pipeline. What is it that's holding us back? Why is this not moving forward? I'll sort of let that be jump ball, but maybe I'll call on somebody if there's not a volunteer. Okay, maybe if I could.
I think
Kurt?
there are several volunteers
Go ahead.
among our attendees. They're very interesting speakers among the attendees, but we cannot provide the floor to them, right?
Well, let me just maybe try to follow through on that a little bit, though. Kurt, do you have any particular senses on that, since you're the one who sort of gets asked all these awkward questions all the time?
Yeah. I'll say something very general on Trans-Caspian. I talked in my opening remarks about vision. Certainly the Trans-Caspian is one of those visions. It makes imminent sense. It's made imminent sense for 10 or 15 years now. There's a huge volume of energy resources in Turkmenistan. They sell some to China, they sell some to Russia. I don't think those are necessarily happy relationships. The West, including Azerbaijan, but companies, governments have extended a hand to the government of Turkmenistan numerous times, saying, why don't you take advantage of this opportunity that we're presenting to you? And the way to do it is the way we do it in the Western world, which is work with Western oil companies who bring the best technology, the best business practices, who, as Chevron was talking about in Kazakhstan, make it a priority to bring benefit to the country, to the workers, to the local community, and on and on and on. We've made that offer in numerous ways, numerous people. Bob, you probably were in Ashgabat a few times trying to pursue those opportunities. I've done it. Lots of my predecessors here in the State Department, Energy Bureau, have done the same thing. And every time it looks like maybe this time there will be a change of heart, and that this opportunity we realized, it falls again flat. This is not a problem of the resources. This is not a problem of the technology. This is not a problem of the willingness of the governments and companies to do this. it is a problem of the government in Turkmenistan. And we can continue, and we will continue to hold out that hand and make clear the opportunity and the benefits that would accrue to Turkmenistan in doing this. But if I knew how to change that, we would have done that a long time ago. So it's frustrating. The opportunities, the benefits are astonishingly clear. But the problem is also, unfortunately, clear.
Thank you for that. And I think it is one of the things. I'm looking at my watch. I've got giving us, I think, about 5 minutes left in this program. So what I would like to maybe do is go around, and unfortunately, I'm going to pick from my screen, which does not necessarily help the rest of you. Maybe just some last comments to sort of tie things together. I know there's more questions. I have questions about Russia, questions about Iran that we haven't really been able to sort of get at, but maybe some people in their closing comments. But if I could start going around, and I'm going to pick, first of all, on Deputy Minister Sultanov, because he's in that spot on my screen. So if I can ask the Deputy Minister to maybe just, make a few comments. Also, you're one of the ones I had to cut a little bit short. So please go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. Ambassador. On what issues in general, or regarding certain issues specifically?
Just in general, I think any sort of closing remarks you'd like to, since we only have about 5 minutes left to tie things together, things you'd like to sort of make sure everybody's aware of.
Oh, I'd like to add to one thing that I was not able to kind of complete, that with Georgia, our cooperation is not just confined to natural gas, and of course, it's not just natural gas. There are many other things, but also we have been exporting quite a sizable amount of electricity to Georgia. And so part of the last question you asked me to answer that, of course, I think in time as Georgia develops, its liberalizes and creates its electricity market, of course, Azerbaijan will be involved there as well. I think around 10% of Georgian consumption when it comes to electricity is provided by Azerbaijan. It doesn't make economic sense all the time, but again, it's not just economics that connects Georgia and Azerbaijan. So I think that's one issue I would like to mention. And also, it's not about Trans-Caspian, but efficiency. And one thing probably I should mention also is that the Caspian Sea in itself also hurts somehow cooperation, especially when it comes to electricity, because on the one hand, you have this different, very difficult geopolitical context that really doesn't help in terms of combining electricity grids and then benefiting from the scale that comes along. But also Caspian Sea doesn't help in that regard either, right? So of course you can pass through the sea with cables, but again, Caspian Sea shores are not very well populated, so I don't think there are very strong grids and generation capacity along the coast of the Caspian Sea, on the other side of the Caspian, or Central Asia. So Caspian also becomes a problem here in terms of developing electricity markets, which is a very important point. And the last point is that I think Azerbaijan is trying to do a lot in terms of efficiency, because we do see that in terms of efficiency, there's a lot of ways to go. And if we have some stations which are burning 100 grams more coal equivalent of energy per kilowatt hour of electricity. And if we deal with that, again, we can free up a lot of natural gas, sizable amount of natural gas to be consumed domestic load. So it's very specific, maybe some points, some of them are a little bit general, but these are the things I would like to add.
Thank you. Mr. Ciccovanni, any final comments?
Yes, I absolutely agree with Mr. Sultanov. We have a great cooperation in Azerbaijan. We have great cooperation with Turkey, and for Georgia, regional cooperation in order to overcome these challenges caused by COVID or other issues. There is no solution to these problems without regional cooperation, without increasing competition, increasing efficiency. We see that the potential between our countries is not finished yet because these hourly markets that we are trying to move, the reserve markets, ancillary services markets, which we are introducing, we think that will bring further benefits, not to Georgia, but for the all countries. And only solution for this COVID challenge is just inventing, developing new approaches, more creative approaches together, implementing new technologies, renewable technologies, energy efficient technologies, and increasing integration between our markets is the solution, I think, for the whole world. So we hope to continue in that direction. Thank you.
Deputy Administrator Pietro, if you maybe make a few any final comments you might have.
Yeah, 4 quick points. First of all, thank you very much. The second point is I think we could have a follow-up meeting on renewables and water management. If that could be organized, I would very much like to do that. I'd also like to propose that we have a separate also on the Blue Dot Network. There was a question on the Blue Dot Network, and that's something the U.S. government is actively pursuing. I would also very much like to follow up, and I know we've been speaking with the private sector. That is key. It is very key for us. It multiplies our abilities to bring about this development objectives that we want. So with Chevron, with SOCAR, with BP and others, we continue to enjoy discussions with them, but to concretize, not just talk, but very specific things, and we have been working with them. And then finally, the DFC and the USAID with state, of course, but we're doing a lot in Central Asia. We're beefing up, and they have announced, well, they're looking at an investment fund. So I can't speak for DFC, but I'm engaged with them, and so I just like to throw that on the table. And then thank you to the Policy Center for everything you've done. Over to you. I'll be in contact. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy, any particular any closing comments?
No closing comments, just thanks again. And if you have something like this again, I'd love to talk and go deeper into the importance of Central Asia and the region. And thanks again, everyone.
Thanks. Kurt, anything final?
Just one point that I wanted to make earlier, and I didn't, is the Southern Gas Corridor is a huge achievement, but we can't stop there. This is a tremendous architectural infrastructure grid, and we're looking at creative ways of using this to bring LNG into the process, which can be delivered onto markets that are underserved now in the Balkans and other places. So I know President Aliyev had mentioned some of his ideas in this regard when I was in Baku back in February. It's something that we're looking at. There's still tremendous opportunity here. The job is not done when the gas gets to Turkey, to Italy. There's a lot more to do. Thanks.
Thank you. Elshad Malam, do you want to bring us home?
Oh, thank you, Robert. Ambassador, just using this opportunity, I wanted to find out the English term for the year with 29 February days. Is it bissextile?
Leap year.
Leap year.
Leap year.
In Azerbaijan, it is considered to be unlucky. So instead of seeing you in Washington or elsewhere, you in Baku, and all of our participants were using this webinar. We have this pandemic. We canceled the European Soccer Cup hosting. So I hope that by our next meeting, everything will be fine, and the year will be completed with the celebration of the Southern Gas Corridor completion. Thank you. Thank you.
Inshallah. Let me also take advantage. I see Vitaly in the back. welcome to you and the others at SOCAR who've been so helpful. Just to sort of build on Elshad's point, we were up last night looking at the comet, and I know traditionally comets are also associated with bad things, but as a number of us have sort of been saying, 2020 is special. But I think it's also, I appreciate everybody's participation this morning, afternoon. And I think, to sort of build on something, that Kurt said, there's a lot of unfinished work here. This is a tremendous, this year is a tremendous accomplishment in terms of completion of the Southern Gas Corridor. A lot of us spent a lot of time on that, but there's lots more to be done. This is a region that continues to play an important part in the global energy equation. We did not get into China, not get into Iran, and lots of other things that are out there. So again, thank you all very, very much. Really appreciate it. Efkan, any final comments from you?
Thank you, Ambassador Seguda. I hope everyone enjoyed this discussion. I'd like to thank Das Donnelly, Das Piedra, BP, Chevron, SOCAR, Deputy Minister Sultanov for attending this excellent event. And I just want to make a small comment in the end. We, the West, together with the region, spend a lot of energy, political will, economic resources to build connectivity, transit routes in the region. And I think this critical infrastructure is very important for Central Asia, for Caspian, for the Caucasus, for the economic prosperity in the region. And we should also be careful how we expand it and also how we protect it as well. So in that line, I'd like to thank everyone for attending. And also I noted Das Piedra's points about follow-up meeting on the water resources and also Blue Dot Network. We'll continue our dialogue with the State Department and also with the embassies as well and the think tanks to raise the profile of the region and also continue discussion that are critically concerning for the region itself. Thank you. Thanks a lot for joining us. Thanks for everyone who joined us to follow the event or our website or the Zoom call. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.